Welcome to the Alcohol-Free Revolution podcast. My name is James Lloyd.
And I'm Steve Smith. We are both former professional drinkers turned qualified alcohol-free coaches.
And we're here to inspire you to explore your best life alcohol-free. Whether you're sober curious, considering taking a break, or already loving life alcohol-free, this podcast is for you. Each week, we'll share ideas, tools, and conversations with the leading voices from within the alcohol-free space.
And our goal is simple: to give you the confidence to try it for yourself with stories and strategies that show just how powerful pressing pause on the booze can be.
I coach high achievers, leaders and entrepreneurs who want to reset and regain control of their relationship with alcohol. I focus on breaking down the neuroscience of drinking, because once you understand what's happening in your brain, everything changes. You can find out more about me at my website, alcoholfreecoach.com. Plus, we've recorded a special bonus episode where Steve interviews me about my journey and my work. Just search the Alcohol-Free Revolution, episode 9.
And I work with high-performing dads, helping them show up more consistently at home and at work, and also in their training, by building resilience and unlocking their true potential through an alcohol-free life. I'm also a qualified USGA ultramarathon coach. You can hear about my story in a bonus episode and connect with me on Instagram at sober.illiant or at soberilliant.com.
Before we dive in, a quick favour. Please hit follow or subscribe so you don't miss another episode.
And if you enjoy it, give us a 5-star review. It really helps others who are sober curious find the show, and together we can grow the alcohol-free revolution.
Thanks for listening. On with today's show. Helen Sadler, who is the co-host of Flixwatcher Podcast that Steve and I were lucky enough to be on in the last week or so. Turns out, through meeting Helen, she's alcohol-free. So we wanted to invite her to come and join us on the Alcohol-Free Revolution and share her story. Helen, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me.
We got chatting and it turns out you're alcohol-free, which completely lit me and Steve up, because obviously whenever we find people who are from the fun side of the island, same as us, we always want to get chatting to people. So thanks so much for coming on. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit about you and your background.
Yeah, so you may have heard podcasts. So yeah, I do Flixwatcher Podcast with Kobe. We're going to be hitting our 400th episode this year. So it's a podcast that's been going for a while. It's been really good. So I've guested on a couple of podcasts before, but mainly just kind of like talking about film and TV. But yeah, I came across your profile, James, on LinkedIn and just started following you and enjoying the content, and then saw you got a podcast and thought, oh, you'd be great guests to come along on Flixwatcher and give a bit of a shout out for your podcast as well. Because me and Kobe, we have actually sort of briefly mentioned not drinking before on the podcast in kind of like a passing comment. So yeah, he's someone who I know doesn't really drink much. And yeah, I thought it'd be good to have you on. And then, yeah, thanks so much for inviting me on.
Well, it was brilliant for us, obviously, because you're coming up on 400 episodes. Steve and I are coming up on 9 episodes. So it was a fantastic learning experience for us, just to kind of, to be on a podcast with some pros. So thank you so much for that. As I understand it, you've actually been alcohol-free longer than me and Steve. Is that right?
Yeah, well, I guess I don't have a marker for a day when I stopped. And I say when I've been alcohol free, I have had some drinks in that kind of period. Like I might have had a toast at a wedding, or I found that Glastonbury Festival, very, very poor drink options, and just kind of like had a drink just for some sugar at some point. There was one year that was particularly hot. I had a frozen cocktail because that was what was on offer. So yeah, I haven't got like, I don't say that I'm sober because I'm not, and I have had a drink. But in terms of sort of drinking, there's been periods of, months and months and months and months, years, where I haven't. And considering how much I used to drink and my relationship with alcohol before, it's vastly different. But it was during COVID, I think, and also I started a new job in 2020 and met a colleague at work who, one of the coolest people that I ever met. She's just unbelievably cool. She's a proper rock star. She's in a band, completely like in awe of her in every way. And she just kind of casually dropped it in one day that she didn't drink and she'd been sober for years and years. And that just blew my mind. I think I was just like, just always kind of thought, I'm a big music fan, love festivals, love gigs, love bands, and that kind of rock and roll drinking, growing up in the 90s, ladette culture, the beers was just so big for me. And just to hear someone be like, nope, I don't drink, and I'm still cool and a complete icon, just really shifted
Love
what
that.
not drinking was for me. And that was a real moment. And then, yeah, lockdown as well, just that availability of just kind of drinking and it just creeping in a lot more. I was just like, I don't know whether I want to do it anymore. And I had a few sort of breaks and the benefits sort of around sleep. I used to drink, pass out pretty quickly, but then wake up and then just really struggle to get back to sleep. And that would go on for hours and hours and hours. I'd also do things like go to the pub on a Sunday and, one glass of wine turned into bottles and going to work Monday morning. I had one time I don't know if anyone noticed, like if they did, they didn't say, but I could barely write. I was so hungover and just, you just do it and you just think, oh yeah, this is normal. And then you kind of sit back and think, this isn't normal. That's not something I want to do. And yeah, when I started drinking, I was very young, probably, I don't know, 13, 14, getting pissed in the park with a bottle of cider. Went round to a friend's one night and their parents had made some homemade wine and it was, gave it to us. I was very sick, very, very ill. I think he was worried he might have to have called an ambulance to that kind of point. And all these moments, I've been at festivals and had to be the person dragged around, carried around because I got too drunk. Threw up everywhere, had to be carried back to my tent, which of course, people who were with me, they were like, where's your tent? I was like, it's over there. And they're like, where is it? Over there.
Field.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of those stories that are sort of funny, but I look back now and just, yeah, not normal, not someone I want to be. And yeah, since drinking, I've had better sleep. I just have more energy. I just feel that I'm not controlled by something anymore and that whatever I do is my choice rather than it being dictated by something that is just a drink. And I always sort of remind people when I'm kind of like talking about alcohol that if it was invented today, it would never get past. Like
No.
the effect on your health in terms of cancers or just general kind of health is so bad that people would just be, what is this? Why? But it's just become so ingrained in culture. It's marketed so well. It's in films, it's in TV, it's just everywhere that you go. They sneak it into food. It's there in occasions. It's wine is a parenting support service. It's everywhere. And
I mean, wine culture.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I think it is changing. And I have met a lot of more younger people who don't drink, and I think that's really great for them that they've made that decision. Neither of my brothers drink. I think maybe they just saw me and possibly my dad and thought we don't want any of that. Christmas days, I used to also DJ quite regularly in a local club, and some nights I didn't even remember getting home from that. So God knows what the DJing would have been like. Completely chaotic, I imagine. And yeah, if I did that or, a night out, then the next day would be a write-off. It would be in bed, just kind of trying to sleep it off. All those days that I lost to being hungover. I don't have that now. I can get up when I want. You can go to the gym, you can lie in bed, you can do anything. You're not strapped to the bed with a pounding headache, feeling like you want to die. So yeah, saying goodbye to hangovers just it's life changing. You're like, why am I choosing to put myself through that kind of pain? And my anxiety as well is much better. I'd have less moments of complete dread, and I sort of realized that they would come after mostly a big drinking session. Obviously started reading a lot more about how it affects your brain, and yeah, it all sort of kind of made sense for me. And I think it's probably a common thing for people to say when they've stopped drinking is that the only thing they regret is that they'd not done it sooner.
Yeah, very true. One thing you mentioned there really stuck out to me when you were describing, how you used to go to festivals and things like that, and you described it as it's just what I was doing was just not normal. But I think a lot of people have that perception that "Oh, I can't be doing this. No one else is doing that. It's just me." But particularly, for Steve and I, who talk to a lot of people, obviously, who want to change their relationship with alcohol, it actually is incredibly normal. But people just don't realize that we all feel very isolated that, oh, it's just me that's got this problem. I'm the one who hasn't got the off switch. Everybody else can take it or leave it and is having a wonderful time. But that's part of what we're trying to do on this podcast is to get across to people that it isn't just you. You're not alone in this. And what you're going through is really common for particularly for people when they get a little bit older, when they're perhaps getting to around 40 and they're perhaps starting to question that is alcohol really doing for me what it was doing for me when I was 20? Because I think we go into it thinking that it helps me relax and helps me socialize and I'm more fun and all those things. And that probably was true when you were 20, but it's not really as true when you're 40. But you talked about your dad there briefly, and I think a lot of our beliefs about alcohol that we form when we're a lot younger, until we actually start to unpack them and really examine them and are they still true, that's when what I think a lot what you're talking about becomes a reality for a lot of people. So could you talk a little bit about what your background was with alcohol? You mentioned your dad briefly there. Is that something you're comfortable sharing?
Yeah, so he worked in a brewery, so that
Okay.
was a big thing for
Obviously a
him.
start.
Um, and he also did shift work, so obviously for him being on different working hours, obviously he would use alcohol to help him go to sleep. He's a big beer drinker. That's what I'm from Burton-on-Trent, which is the home of brewing.
Yeah, that's where Carling's from, isn't it?
Yeah, so yeah, Carling, Bass, Marston. So yeah, from Burton and Trent. So brewing is in like the blood. Like there used to be pubs everywhere. It was very much a drinking town. That's basically what you do. You'd go to the pub, um, and I remember him basically when Hooch came out was one of the things he kind of
Hooch.
brought some home. He's like, "Do you want to try this?" I would have been like quite young, and it was just very, very normalized. And I was going to pubs when I was maybe 16. There was a few pubs that we had around us that we could get in. One person looked old enough, and we'd send them to buy the drinks, but also going around friends' houses as well. It was kind of allowed, I guess. But yeah, kind of reflecting a lot more now being sober, the environment that it created at home. I mean, you just never know what kind of person you're going to get when someone's drunk. And, is it that someone going to be happy? Are they going to be sad? Are they going to be angry? And most of the time for me, it was just a lot of kind of tiptoeing around, waiting for him to kind of pass out and hope there wouldn't be any conversation or anything like that. And he does drink now, maybe not quite as much since he's retired, but it's still very much a thing for him. I think he was a bit surprised when I sort of said I don't drink anymore. I think it's hard also as a woman when you sort of mention any time from your 20s to your mid 40s that you're not drinking, that everyone suddenly assumes that you're pregnant or you're trying to get pregnant, which is a completely other set of things, that women have a different experience. He's kind of accepted it. We've not really talked about it. I don't know how I would talk about it with him, but it is one of those things. It's hard to watch people that you love drink to a point where it affects you and your relationship. And I think when I was kind of going through my journey, I think what I'd thought an alcoholic was, or kind of like a drinking problem, was someone, was hiding vodka around the house or was getting completely smashed every day. But I've reframed it that a drinking problem or an issue with alcohol is any, if your drinking is getting in the way of your relationships with people, then that becomes a problem. And that might be just having a drink a night, or it might be that you only drink once a month, but that once a month drinking is creating those problems in your life. So it's not about how much you drink or what you drink. It's about what happens to the relationships and the people around you when you do drink. And if it's causing problems, or if it's causing arguments, or if it's isolating you, then that's when it starts to become a problem. Because yeah, that's how I've kind of seen it. And for me, I just needed to kind of like step back, because it was putting me in situations that I didn't want to be in. It was stopping me from being who I wanted to be. And I just was like, you know what? I don't think I actually really enjoy the taste either. It's just something that we're conditioned to do. And it's really expensive as well. The difference in removing alcohol from a meal out or your shopping bill is just going to make such a difference financially. So it was a few easy wins like that for me.
Thank, thanks for sharing that, Helen. I mean, that's really, really honest of you. And I think, looking back at, like you're saying there, with your previous relationship with alcohol, and you mentioned a little earlier on in our chat about the ladette culture in the 90s and how that played a huge part. And equally, you talking there so honestly about, what is a problem, and what, if at the end of the day, if it becomes a problem for you or a problem for the people around you, then it's a problem. And whether that's one drink a week or the opposite of that, So in terms of that ladette culture, do you remember how much of a part that played in your early relationships with alcohol? Because it was something I hear people talking about so much in the 90s, and how it was so glorified, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, so like one of my favorite bands are Blur, and they have a early documentary called Star Shaped, and it's a great snapshot of like their life in the 90s. But they are pissed all the time. There's a clip, and they're performing a song called Day Upon Day, and Damon is visibly throwing up on stage, and he can barely make it through the song. And they're just completely chaotic performances because they're drunk. But it's
Mm,
also quite funny.
mm,
At one point, they lose Graham, and Britpop 90s, people like Zoe Ball, those girls like pints of beer. So that was a thing. Like I used to drink pints of beer. I'm quite small. I can't drink pints of beer. Literally, I would be sick because I just couldn't drink that much, but I still did it. And then that kind of like watching Blur. Eventually, they threw Graham out the band through his drinking. Like he just didn't turn up to sessions. It became that much of a problem. He doesn't drink now. Neither does Dave. Like they're both very much that 90s period, and being in the band, being on the road has had such an effect on them that, they had to stop drinking, else they probably wouldn't still be here.
mm,
So yeah, it was very much like pints, shots, and then going to uni, like shot culture. There was a bar that we used to like, and it was like 50p for a shot of vodka. So you could have like a vodka and coke for £1.50. So the cheapness of alcohol, the availability, yeah, it was just pints, drinking all the pints, drinking with the lads, drinking at festivals. I'd go to a lot of festivals. You'd get up, first beer, probably about 11, maybe, if you could hold off until midday. Depends on how hungover you were and how quickly you needed to get it. And then I've got like photos of me just like holding double pints in a field. Yeah, just and then you'd drink your pints, and then at some point you'd move on to your bottle of stuff, which would be half and half of vodka, rum, and then a mixer, if that, drinking that, the rest of it, and then more pints. But yeah, the beer culture was huge. Um, I drink alcohol-free beer now, but not nowhere near in the quantities that I did. And just when I look back at pictures of myself before I stopped drinking, I can just kind of like see the alcohol in my face and around me as kind of that layer of that fatty layer that it kind of gives you. It's, yeah, the physical change that I've had since not drinking is for me, I just feel healthier. I look healthier.
Yeah.
I just don't have that beer bloat. I think was what I had for what a good 20, maybe 30 years.
I think that's not spoken about enough actually, because I think because there are so many benefits of being alcohol free, the actual physical appearance side of it doesn't actually get mentioned as much as it probably should. Because well, the first thing is just how easy it is to lose weight when you stop drinking. I mean, you literally have to do nothing but put the glass down, and you'll lose half a stone in a month. I mean, that's true for me and lots of other people. And I know, see, women are slightly different from men in terms of weight gain, but the calories from alcohol that immediately disappear that we just don't really consider as being a thing when we're drinking. But I think the other thing as well that you mentioned it briefly there is in your face with that kind of blow, you just the effect that it has on your hair and your eyes and your skin and your nails and all of these things kind of come to life. And I do think that I think I could pick somebody out of a lineup who doesn't drink, and it normally is the one person out of maybe six people, and everybody else does. So it does show. You can see when people don't drink. You can see in in their eyes and their skin and their hair. And yeah, but it doesn't get taught. It's such a huge benefit. You think about how much money is spent on Botox and face creams and all of the whole beauty industry. And yet, when you stop dehydrating your skin every single day just by drinking, it's a huge benefit that just doesn't even really get mentioned, I think.
Yeah, I noticed it straight away. Just always felt like I was just carrying like a ring of fat around my waist, and
Mm.
and that just was alcohol, and I don't have that anymore. And like I don't kind of like the, the ideal isn't skinny. Like there's nothing about that, but it's for me kind of the realization of how the body holds on to it and what it does to it is it's just, yeah, like you say, if you're looking to lose weight, the quickest thing you can do is just to stop drinking. And if you want to feel healthier, if you want more energy, that's like the first thing. But yeah, it's like a sort of an instant facelift, I think.
It is. It really is. It
And
really.
it just, though, even it's just really hard to explain the difference in how I feel when I look at these pictures to when I kind of look at my face now. And it's just, I'm always like, the difference is there and I can see it. And I know it was just through drinking.
Mm. It's only when you hold up the comparison that you can see it though, right? At the time, you just think, well, that's just me. That's just
Yeah.
normal.
So Helen, when you decided to make that shift, and was it a direct decision there and then? Did you have a few? Did you have a few sort of failed attempts to take a break, or was it just a big decision dawned on you one day just to make that change?
Yeah, I think it was my colleague Layla. I sort of said to her, I think I'm going to do it. And I think I tried moderation first, which I think probably what everyone kind of did in that, you kind of stop, but then maybe you drink. And then it was how I felt after having those drinks. I didn't feel the benefit. I didn't gain anything from it. And it kind of made me feel bad that I'd sort of broken the not drinking. So it was a little bit stop and starty and a little bit maybe not being able to um some social situations I hadn't quite worked out how to navigate not drinking and just kind of defaulted to having a drink or maybe like having the drink like with the wedding things. Sometimes like having a toast is a nice thing to do. Sometimes there was a an alcohol alternative, sometimes there wasn't, and sometimes I might have had a glass, but that was kind of it. But there were times where I'd kind of had a drink and then that led to more. And that I think was the issue with moderation. And then once you're kind of in that again, it's like, oh, one more won't hurt, or like maybe let's have another one down the line. But I'm now, if like I said, when I made, like when we had that drink at Glastonbury, I had the drink and that was it. I didn't feel like I needed more. And
Mm.
that's, I think that was the big difference. Um, but yeah, there was a very long stretch. Maybe I should start like making a marker so I can be a bit more of a celebratory thing. But
I was actually thinking the opposite because I think the way that you've described it is what a lot of people want to get to a situation where alcohol is just isn't a thing anymore and it's just not particularly relevant. But they don't have to go to this extreme where they say, I'm never drinking again, because that for most people is just too big. It's too much, too hard, it's too big a statement to get your head around. And that's like, oh my God, never. But it's about changing your beliefs and about through your learned experience getting to where you are, where you're just like, well, yeah, I could have a drink if I wanted, but I'm just not asked. I just don't particularly want one. So you don't have that kind of restrictive, alcohol's forbidden mindset. You're like, well, if I have a drink, I'll have a drink, but it's just not a thing for me anymore. And I think that's. Can you talk to us a little bit about how that transition's kind of gone? Because obviously, you talked about, at one point you were, drinking a fair bit. How have you gradually moved from that position where it's just not relevant for you anymore?
yeah, I think it's the benefits. I think I've always been a little bit cautious about talking about that because I think like what you've said with your podcast is that you talk about being alcohol free rather than sober. And sometimes if you talk about like maybe having a drink every now and again with people who are sober, there's different kind of feelings about that. And for some people to have one drink would be to completely undo years and years of that, and they wouldn't be able to kind of stop. So I am a little bit cautious about that's why I would never say being sober because
Mm.
I might have a drink, and I do have occasionally I might have a like a radler, which is a like a
Mm.
2 point
It's
something
handy, yeah.
beer, which is yeah a shandy, which is
Mm.
technically not alcohol free, but it's also a point where if you have one of those, there's the
You're not
effect
really
is
drunk. Yeah.
nothing. So it's there's I think there's a lot of kind of differing opinions on if you have a zero point 0.5 beer or 1% beer, then are you technically being sober? I don't want to get
Yeah.
I'm not getting sucked into that. So yeah, and I don't know. I think it was more me kind of reflecting and going back and thinking about when I've drank alcohol and been sick, which for about 10 years was frequently. Um, and that there's a lot of things that we kind of drink and I've drank them and it's disgusting and I've not really liked the taste, but I've
You
done it
do lose the
anyway.
taste, though.
Yeah, I think you do
You
pretty
do. You lose the
quickly.
taste.
And then when I have had, and that was another thing, when I have had that occasional one drink, I've not enjoyed the taste. I'm like, oh, what am I doing? Stop. But it's the benefits. I love sleep, and the times where maybe I might have had a drink, my sleep has instantly been disrupted, and that's been like the killer for me.
Yeah.
Or like seeing the price of a drink, I'm just like, I would
Well,
rather not spend that £6-7 on a drink that I probably don't really like the taste of anymore. Also, is not really going to have much of an effect on me because uh, I'm not going to have another. So it's all of those things together. But I think it was the benefits in terms of like how I look, how I felt. Like I feel like I'm probably like the fittest that I've ever been. And that's because I don't wake up in the morning and want to die and lie in bed all day. You know, I want to get up and go to the gym. I want to get up and go swimming. I want to get up and go to yoga. I'm also like we don't spend loads of money on takeaways anymore. I don't eat as much junk food as I used to do because I don't have those hangovers that give you the craving for that. So it's just all these benefits really that I began to kind of appreciate more over time. So I think, yeah, it definitely was reflecting that I didn't really enjoy drinking alcohol that much. And I just kind of felt that I was doing it because that's what everyone else did and that was socially acceptable. And then when I realized that actually it was my choice and I could still go out and have a good time and I could still do all these things, albeit differently. Like if I go to parties now, I'm probably the first to leave. I kind of know that at some point the conversations will start getting slurred, the stories will get repeated. And I'm like, well, that's my point to leave. Like, you know, nothing ever really happens after a certain point at parties. It's just people get more
But
drunk.
do you feel like you're missing out on anything by leaving a
No,
couple of hours in? No,
no,
that's yeah, kind of
no.
teacher. But
I think maybe in the start a little bit, and then no, and then
Nothing.
it's just gibberish. Like once you get to a certain point, no one remembers either because everyone's pissed, or it's
that's the reality, isn't it? I think
yeah,
for again, before when we're trying to figure out how we're going to reduce our drinking, we kind of sort of think, yeah, but I like doing all those things. But when you actually get there and you do it without alcohol, you have this realization that yeah, the first couple of hours are great because everyone's connecting and you know, people are bonding and people are talking, two-way conversation. But then after kind of 3 or 4 pints, all of a sudden, what actually are you missing out on? You have this perception that, yeah, but I like going to the pub for 6 hours. Well, yeah, maybe you do. But what are you actually missing? Try it out and have a look at what. So I think a lot of it is trial and error, isn't it? And we encourage people to take a break from alcohol, whether that's 60 days or 90 days, so you can actually have that comparison, that data point. Because I think for many
Mm.
people, and definitely was mine and Steve's story, was that you know we'd never taken a break at all from alcohol until we literally got to 40. You know, so from the age of 16, 17, 18, whatever, literally just drank week in, week out, year in, year out. Maybe you had a week off when you had a cold or something, but never actually took a meaningful break where you're being mindful about, okay, how is actually, you know, I've got a view of how socializing is going to be, and I think it's going to be really boring, it's going to be shit, and everyone thinks I'm going to be no fun. That's your belief, but have you actually tried it? And then do it 2 or 3 times, and you realize, oh, actually, it's not quite how I thought it was. And you know, that's I think the difference of this idea of going right. I'm never drinking again. I'm going cold turkey. I'm going to switch everything off, lock myself away. That's very different from approaching it from a position of kind of curiosity and I wonder what it could be like, rather than this idea of well, I can't have this thing that I want. And I think that's for a lot of people is what really makes a difference. Is going into it with the curiosity mindset rather than a restriction mindset. And that's kind of what I was getting at when I was, you know, fishing for how you made that transition. That seems to be what's happened, right? Is that fair to say?
yeah, and I that it's that is also something that I try and get across is that you're not losing something, you're gaining other things and you're gaining insights into yourself and you know you've got to put the work in though, like you've got to think like you know if you are saying goodbye to alcohol then what are the other things that bring you joy and one of the things that I absolutely love is coffee. Like I could
Really?
never give up coffee.
No.
Like I when I go to bed at night, I think I can't wait until the morning when I can have my first cup of coffee. And like a takeaway coffee is like my kind of treat. Like sometimes when I go out with people like for to the pub or to a restaurant, like I'll have a coffee as my drink. You know, I'll look forward to you know a nice coffee with fancy milk and things, providing it's not after 2 p.m. because I can't do that. And also something else that I realised when going out for meals is that if I'd had alcohol with a dinner, I'd never get to dessert because I'd be too full, or you'd just kind of be too bloated or feeling sick.
Mm.
I'm a dessert person. I
Yeah,
look forward to like having that space for the dessert and trying. If there's a tiramisu on the menu, I will try that, and I will definitely see the dessert menu now. And
yeah.
it's just changed how I enjoy and eat food now. Whereas before, you'd go, you'd have a drink to begin with, so you might already be feeling a bit pissed, a bit tipsy. And then when the food comes, you kind of like eat it, but it's a different experience now. Like I'm a lot fussier about where I go, and I want to have like a really great food experience. And I know there's people who are like, there's amazing wines that you can pair with that meal and everything, which is fine if that's your thing. But now I'm a dessert person and I've got space and I can enjoy my tiramisus.
See, I've got a smile from ear to ear because what you just described is exactly my experience. I love coffee now. I never used to be remotely bothered about dessert, but now you've got the bandwidth, right? Because you've got all
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
calories. And yeah, I'm saying dessert, man. You 100%. And it's, yeah,
It's it's really interesting you hearing that say that, Helen, because I don't know if you know, but I spent 30 plus years of my life working in restaurants and bars. Um, and yeah, for me, associating that food and wine was quite a big thing, and I thought that would be when it was for a long time one of my biggest hurdles. But yeah, yeah, echoing what James and yourself have said, yeah, I'm an absolute coffee snob now, and I think my I've changed my palate. But you discover new things that you can associate with the food. I've actually discovered, I love wine and I love cheese, and I never thought I could associate cheese without wine. But actually, there's so many different flavors you can play with, whether it's a drink with ginger, because actually ginger and wine go very well together, and playing around with that a little bit as well. But did you find it hard, or was that an immediate change for you that you could associate, dining and not having wine, or was wine ever a big part of your dining experience?
You know what? I've never really had money, so if I had wine in the restaurant, it would always be the cheapest bottle. And to be honest, if I drank wine, it would be like, what's the cheapest one that would get us pissed?
Mm.
Like if we went out, a girls' night would be, we'd get some bottles in, and it would be what's the one that's going to get us pissed the quickest. So I've never really been a massive wine person, but I have tried quite a few. Alcohol-free wines because I like sparkling wines. And I did used to quite like a rosé, so I found some quite nice alcohol-free wines. I think at Christmas I missed having like a sparkling wine to have with lunch, and I kind of missed the the crisp kind of flavors that you get from wines, but a kombucha or something like that will give you that kind of flavor hit. I think a lot of it is the like the association, and having like a alcohol-free fizz in a wine glass in that situation can give you the same feeling. So yeah, I was never really a wine connoisseur because I never really had money to spend on it. And when people had bought expensive wines, I'd be like, I can't tell the difference. My
Mm.
my wine palate is not that sophisticated to say whether this £100 bottle is better than the £5 one from Tesco. It's just what would have got me drunk the quickest.
It's
So yeah,
interesting. Sorry, I do apologize, but it's interesting you hearing saying that possibly, you get on with some of the wines, the alcohol-free wines, and that's because I think we've come so far in alcohol-free beer and spirits. It's the options now are so vast. I think in terms of the wine, I think you're right. In some of the sparklings, they're definitely getting there. I think there's some way to go, but actually, it's so encouraging to see that coming through now as well. And it's interesting to hear you say that you're getting on pretty well with some of them.
yeah. I mean, Kylie Minogue's got a alcohol-free sparkling wine. It's
I love
it's
Kylie.
lovely. It's great. It's really nice and refreshing.
Yeah.
And it's also like one of those things where if you kind of like a sparkling wine, but you don't want to get pissed, like try it. You can have it in the day, like you can have it in the afternoon. Like if you kind of like a bit of fizz and a bit of a fruity flavor, this is here. Like You don't have to not be drinking to kind of enjoy this. I've tried quite a lot of the alcohol-free cocktails. I find quite a lot of them a bit sweet. I think there's one, is it Savills? Is it that brand? I can't remember. They do some nice ones, but I wasn't never really a big cocktail drinker anyway. So yeah, it's more the beers. I've tried a lot of beers. Some of them are great. Some of them are a bit.
What's your top three favorite alcohol-free beers and how?
So it's definitely Lucky Saint would
Oh,
be.
100%.
Yeah, it's such a great one.
Have you
Great
tried the
flavor.
Radler?
I haven't. No, I have been looking for it in the
It's
shops.
excellent. Yeah,
So
it's
yeah, I
in
need to
most
get on
places
that.
now.
Yeah,
It's
definitely need to
excellent.
get on that. I do like a Beavertown Laser Crush as well.
That's quite heavy sugar, that one.
Is it?
A lot of sugar in that one, yeah. It's like a can of Coke.
Oh, really?
I don't know if you know this, Helen, but James actually scales. I think he's got a big chart somewhere in his house where he
I've got,
actually
Marks them
ranks
down.
no,
ranks his
I put it on
beers.
my phone. I'm going to publish this sometime on LinkedIn or on the website. But yeah, I've tried about 90 odd alcohol-free beers, and I've scored them all 1 to 5 in the
Ah,
notes of my phone, so that I can take. Because you're right, there's some absolutely fantastic ones, but there is a lot of terrible ones as well. So I can go back and check which ones. And I've got about sort of 15 5-star alcohol-free beers, which I kind of honed down. But sorry, you were saying Lucky Saint
Lucky Saint,
down.
the Beavertown, and then I like the Peroni for like one
Oh,
that you can find in most shops. And if worse comes to worse, I'll have a Heineken. But yeah, I'll always. I was at End of the Road Festival this weekend, and they had a Bristol alcohol-free one, and that was great. It was on tap as well, so you could have that as a pint or a half pint, which was great because yeah, I really think that festivals are seriously like lagging behind in what they can offer people who don't want to drink, because it is basically Coke, and no one wants to drink Coke all weekend either. So there's an opportunity there for alcohol-free brands to get in on festivals, because there isn't much there, and there is a market for people who don't want
It's pretty
to get
shocking,
wasted
really.
at festivals anymore. Like especially just people who can't drink or are pregnant, or just want something that isn't a sugar-laden Coke, really.
There's 20% of the adult population don't drink now. That's 10 million people. So, I mean, I think a lot of well, the grocers and the supermarkets have absolutely jumped on board and are printing money off the back of alcohol free, which is great. But you're right. I think the hospitality sector is a little bit still behind. I saw a post on social media recently where someone had been to a gig at
The
Wembley.
O2. Or was
Well,
it Wembley?
to
It
Wembley,
was
and they
either
had
Wembley or
no,
the O2.
they had
Yeah.
no alcohol beer whatsoever. And I'm a bit like, wow. And I almost kind of akin that to going to a restaurant and not having a vegetarian option. I think it's in this day and age, I just think it's absolutely ridiculous. And you kind of look at the way the hospitality sector is struggling, and you look at the amount of particularly under 25s who don't drink now and who don't really bother going to pubs anymore. And it's because they're not offering enough choice. I'm not saying you shouldn't offer alcohol. Of course you should, but they definitely need to upweight the amount of alcohol-free options that are available, because there's 10 million people that don't drink. Well,
Yeah. If
it's
I
it's
if I go
crazy.
to I went to a pub recently in Balham, and I think they had two, maybe three alcohol beers. They had a range of like gin options, and they had the Crodino as well, which is like
No.
the Aperol kind of spritz, and that was amazing. I had three different drinks, and they were all alcohol free options, and they were all different, and
Mm.
just that's just seems like a no brainer. Like the other thing, obviously, with alcohol free drinks is most of them are in bottles, so it's not like you have to you know, have it on tap where if you don't sell one day, then it's going to go off or anything like that. So yeah, there's just, and also like another thing with having beers on tap or having the alcohol-free cocktails is that no one knows the difference. So if you're kind of worried about people knowing if you don't want to drink, an alcohol-free looks like a regular beer in a glass. No one's going to know.
Mm.
No one's not going to go, that beer got alcohol in it. It just looks, so if you're kind of in a position where you want to kind of stop drinking, but the social kind of situation isn't working. No one knows. Like I've been to parties and people are like, "Oh, can I get you a drink?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'll just have that." And they're like, "Oh," I was like, "Oh, you're not drinking?" I was like, "I've not been drinking all night." No, no one notices half the time. Like
Right.
it really, really sometimes I think people over over think what other people are going to think you're doing or
100%. Yeah,
doing or how
completely
you're
agree with you.
presenting yourself and
No one cares. No
no
one
one
cares
no
what
one
you're doing.
cares.
No
People
one
just care
cares.
about themselves. That's so spot on. I think so many people, when they're, they put that kind of roadblock up and like, oh yeah, but all my friends are going to just absolutely take the piss out of me and I'm going to get laughed at and I'll be, thrown out of the tribe. And it's like, no one cares. You might have to deal with it for 30 seconds, maybe. You don't have a drink? No. Okay, next. You know what I mean? It's just not a big deal anymore. And maybe it was 5 years ago, maybe it was when you were 25, but it's just not a big deal anymore. But people really obsess over it. It's like, well, yeah, but I couldn't possibly be humiliating. That's pretty not. Really
I
not.
think I think when you stop drinking initially, people are asking you why you're not drinking, but then further down the line, I've certainly found people are starting to ask me how I'm not drinking, and it you kind of you become that lighthouse to people. And I didn't personally have any major friction or questions when I decided to take a break, but I know some people did. Did you find social situations challenging at the beginning, Helen, or were people pretty accepting?
I think people were accepting, but to the point where it was a bit like, I'm not drinking. And it was like, well, do you just want the one? Or um, kind of asking, like, are you sure? And like, do
Mm,
you want this or do you want that? And that's kind of changed over time now, where people just remember, accept it. I have found that maybe some relationships have changed, and that maybe I've seen some people less, but then maybe I've seen some people more,
mm,
which and also I think is just what happens as you grow up and get older and you have different life paths to people. But yeah, I've definitely felt that some relationships have changed, and maybe the drinking and the partying was what maybe held it together. I'm not sure because, you know, geography and getting older also play a much bigger part, I think, when you grow up and you get into your late 30s and 40s.
Mm. I feel like we could talk to you all afternoon, Hannah. 'Cause, this is always what happens when when you meet new people who don't drink. You literally just got so much joy to share and so much, shared experiences. But could I ask you if you met somebody who perhaps was sober curious or was maybe on day one, what advice would you give them?
I would say, well done, welcome, and that, one day at a time. And yeah, just to think of it as like not what you're losing or what you're missing out on, but what is it, you're gaining, and like, why are you doing this? Like, is it for you? Is it for your family? Is it for your health? And really think about those reasons. And, it is just a drink. It's not everything. There's many other things in the world that are wonderful and beautiful and exciting. And alcohol doesn't have to define you as a person. Like you will still be funny and interesting and a great person to hang out with, not being drunk. So it's just it might feel scary and it might feel that maybe you're losing a part of yourself, but there's so much more to gain. And if you stick with it, you'll find those benefits, and it it will change your life in ways that maybe you haven't realized. And also that, there's a huge community of support for you, um, like yourselves, podcasts. There's lots of social media accounts for support.
Mm.
Everyone who has given up drink is there to help, give you advice, share their experiences. You can reach out to any of us and we'll always be happy to listen.
For
And
sure.
also that, if you start drinking again and slip up, it's every day is a new day and a new opportunity for change.
Yeah, that's absolutely wonderful insight. Steve, anything you want to add before we
No,
wrap
it's
up?
just I just wanted to add that was beautifully put, and it's so nice to hear you say that. And I think that you're right. The landscape's changed so much, and there is so much support out there now. And you're right. You might slip. You might make a mistake, or you might decide one day, and actually it's just a learning curve, and we keep moving out of that and moving on. But I just thought that was such a lovely way you put it there, that the world is, still so beautiful, and there's so many wonderful things you can do, and alcohol doesn't have to define you. And I think that was a really lovely way to finish off there.
Thanks so much for joining us, Helen. It's been absolutely just a joy to talk to you, and really appreciate you sharing everything so openly. Whereabouts can people find you if they want to learn, if they want to interact with you?
Yeah, so I mean, my kind of like personal profiles tend to be a bit private, but you can come and find us at Flixwatcher. We're at Flixwatcher and then at Flixwatcher Pod. But if you can just find us by searching. I do have a public profile where I share secondhand outfits. That's the thing that I enjoy. You can find me on Instagram. I'm at my _secondhand_wardrobe. That's kind of like my public profile. But yeah, if you like films, if you enjoy this podcast, then come and find us on Flixwatcher, because you're both guests on there, and you'll be talking about film picks there. So yeah, but thanks so much for having me. This has been like a really good experience for me, talking in kind of like more of a public space about my drinking, and I kind of feel that I'm getting more kind of confident in how I feel, and getting to a point where I feel a bit more confident to talk to others as well, to kind of, you don't want to like be preachy, but it's hard when something's so great and you just want everyone to experience it, I think is how I feel about not
your
drinking.
identity. That's great. Well, listen, thank you so much for your time, and we'll speak to you again soon.
Thanks so
Thank you very
much.
much.
For joining
Thank
us.
you.
Bye.
Bye now.